Something is happening to us as a society, and it should terrify every thinking person. On September 10th, 2025, at Utah Valley University, political violence claimed another life. A 31-year-old man was gunned down while speaking. In that moment, we lost more than one person. We lost another piece of our humanity. Here's what haunts me. This could have been anyone, any speaker, any ideology, any campus. The shooter's politics don't matter. The victim's politics don't matter. What matters is that we've created a world where ideas are worth killing for, where human beings become targets simply for speaking their beliefs. A wife became a widow. Parents buried their son. A young man destroyed his own life trying to destroy what he hated. And somewhere in the dark corners of social media, people are probably celebrating. This isn't about left versus right. This is about what we're becoming. Carl Jung saw this coming. He watched civilized societies tear themselves apart, and he understood something we're only beginning to grasp. The greatest threat to humanity isn't external. It's the ancient forces stirring inside our own minds, and they're waking up. 3 days after the shooting, FBI agents arrested Tyler James Robinson, a 22-year-old apprentice electrician from Utah. Let that sink in for a moment. 22 years old. Someone who could be your son, your brother, your co-worker. Someone who gets up every morning, goes to work, probably has dreams about the future. The evidence tells a chilling story. Security cameras caught Robinson positioning himself on a rooftop, methodically preparing for what he believed was an act of heroism. At 12:23 p.m., as the speaker discussed campus free speech, something Robinson probably once cared about too, shots rang out from above. When investigators found the rifle, they discovered something that would have made Jung's blood run cold. Bullet casings engraved with messages. "Hey fascist, catch!" and "Bella Ciao," a World War II resistance song. Do you see what's happening here? Robinson wasn't just committing murder. He was performing what felt like a sacred ritual, complete with inscribed bullets and resistance anthems. He thought he was saving the world. Here's the part that broke my heart. Robinson's own father, a former police officer, helped turn his son in. Imagine that phone call. Imagine that choice. The young man had confessed to a family member, probably expecting support, maybe even praise. Instead, he learned what Jung tried to warn us about. When you become possessed by forces larger than yourself, you stop being you. And the people who love you have to watch helplessly as you disappear.
Carl Jung once wrote, "The greatest danger to mankind comes not from earthquakes or disease, but from our own unconscious minds." He wasn't being dramatic. He lived through 2 world wars. He watched his neighbors become Nazis. He saw ordinary, decent people transform into monsters, not because they were evil, but because they didn't understand the hidden forces controlling them. Jung realized something that should keep us all awake at night. When we don't understand the ancient patterns operating in our minds, they can use us like puppets. He called these forces archetypes, and they're older than civilization itself. Picture this. You're watching a movie, and within seconds you know exactly who everyone is. The hero, the villain, the wise mentor, the innocent in danger. How do you know? Because these roles are hardwired into every human brain that's ever existed. Jung explained,
The archetypes are the forms or riverbeds along which the current of psychic life has always flowed. Think of them as psychological software that came pre-installed in your mind. The hero who must save the day. The mother who protects at any cost. The wise teacher who guides the lost. The enemy who threatens everything sacred. Here's what's terrifying. Most of the time, we think we're choosing our reactions, but we're not. We're running ancient programs. You feel protective when your family is threatened? That's the mother archetype. You want to fight injustice? That's the hero. You see someone as pure evil? That's the enemy archetype taking over your perception. Usually, this is harmless. You might feel heroic helping a neighbor, or wise when giving advice. That's normal. But Jung discovered something chilling. It is perfectly possible, psychologically, for the unconscious or an archetype to take complete possession of a man and to determine his fate down to the smallest detail. When that happens, you stop being yourself. You become a character in an ancient story. And ancient stories always end in blood.
Here's where it gets personal.
I want you to think about a political figure you love. Really love. Someone whose words move you, whose cause feels sacred. Got them in mind? Good. Now I'm going to tell you something that might disturb you. You don't love that person. You love what they represent. For millions of Americans, Charlie Kirk wasn't just a conservative commentator. He carried the leader archetype. He embodied traditional values under siege, young conservatives fighting back, a voice for the forgotten. When someone carries archetypal energy like this, their followers don't just agree with their ideas. They see their own identity reflected back. Attack the leader, and you're attacking them. But here's the shadow side Jung warned about. When someone becomes a living symbol to their supporters, they automatically become a living target to their opponents. To those who opposed Kirk's message, he could easily transform from person I disagree with into fascism incarnate. Not a human being with hopes and fears, but a symbol of everything wrong with the world. Robinson's engraved bullets prove this point. He wasn't shooting at Charlie Kirk, the person, someone who probably worried about ordinary things like paying bills and making his wife happy. He was shooting at Charlie Kirk, the symbol, the archetypal enemy who had to be destroyed to save the world. The tragedy is this: both sides were worshiping and hating the same illusion.
Jung witnessed something that still gives me nightmares. He watched millions of ordinary Germans become possessed by the same archetypal forces simultaneously. He called these psychic epidemics, moments when entire societies lose their individual minds and start thinking as one massive, primitive organism. Jung observed, if it is a very large group, the collective psyche will be more like the psyche of an animal, which is the reason why the ethical attitude of large organizations is always doubtful. Look around. Do you see the signs? Social media algorithms designed to amplify outrage. Echo chambers where opposing views never penetrate. 24-hour news cycles turning every event into an existential crisis. Political leaders becoming mythological figures rather than flawed humans. Families torn apart over politics. Friends becoming enemies over ideas. In this environment, violence stops being random and becomes ritualistic. Robinson didn't just shoot someone, he performed what felt like a sacred act of resistance. Jung warned, as archetypes penetrate consciousness, they influence the perceived experience of normal and neurotic people. A too powerful archetype may totally possess the individual and cause psychosis. We are living through a psychic epidemic right now, and most of us don't even realize we're infected.
Jung was precise about how archetypal possession works. Possession can be formulated as identity of the ego personality with a complex. Translation: you stop being yourself and become a character in an ancient story. Jung explained, where the realm of the complexes begins, the freedom of the ego comes to an end. For complexes are psychic agencies whose deepest nature is still unfathomed. Robinson's case shows the warning signs perfectly. Loss of individual judgment. Kirk stopped being a human and became pure symbol. Identification with archetypal role. Robinson became the resistance fighter against fascism. Ritualistic behavior. Engraved bullets turned murder into sacred act. Absolute moral certainty. Total conviction that violence was not just justified, but heroic. Jung noted, the complex must therefore be a psychic factor that, in terms of energy, possesses a value that sometimes exceeds that of our conscious intentions. Otherwise, such disruptions of the conscious order would not be possible at all. Here's what scares me. If you're reading this and thinking, I would never do what Robinson did, you're missing the point. Robinson probably thought the same thing 6 months ago. The terrifying truth is this: any of us can be possessed if the conditions are right. If Jung were alive today, I believe he'd be more frightened than he was during World War II. Not because of any particular political ideology, but because of how we've learned to see each other. We've stopped treating political opponents as fellow humans with different perspectives. Instead, they become archetypal enemies, symbols of everything evil and threatening. Jung wrote, the ego keeps its integrity only if it does not identify with one of the opposites, and if it understands how to hold the balance between them. The result of losing this balance is the mass man, the ever-ready victim of some wretched ism. Look at what's happening. When conservatives see liberals, they often see destroyers of civilization. When liberals see conservatives, they often see fascist oppressors. When the religious see the secular, they often see agents of moral decay. When the secular see the religious, they often see threats to progress. Nobody is seeing actual people anymore. Robinson's case shows where this leads. A 22-year-old man, probably kind to animals, helpful to elderly neighbors, someone who cried at movies, became so possessed by the enemy archetype that murder felt not just justified, but heroic. The most chilling part? In his mind, he was the good guy. So what do? How do we escape this nightmare we've created for ourselves? Jung offered a path forward, but I'm warning you, it requires more courage than most people possess. First, learn to recognize when archetypes are running the show. When you feel overwhelming love or hatred for a political figure, pause. Ask yourself, am I responding to this person or to what they symbolize for me? Jung insisted, our task is not to deny the archetype, but to dissolve the projections. in order to restore their contents to the individual who has involuntarily lost them by projecting them outside himself. Here's a test. Can you think of 3 human qualities about your political enemy? Not their ideas, their humanity. Do they love their children? Worry about getting older? Feel insecure sometimes? If you can't, you're not seeing a person. You're seeing a projection. Second, own your shadow. This is the hard part. Instead of projecting evil onto the other side, Jung said we must face the uncomfortable truth. The capacity for hatred, cruelty, and self-deception lives in all of us. If an inferiority is conscious, one always has a chance to correct it. But if it is repressed and isolated from consciousness, it never gets corrected and is liable to burst forth suddenly in a moment of unawareness. That darkness, that's my shadow. And admitting it is what prevents it from controlling me. Third, humanize the symbol. Charlie Kirk was not just a conservative leader or liberal boogeyman. He was a husband who probably brought his wife coffee in the morning. Someone who might have been nervous before big speeches, who had inside jokes with friends. Tyler Robinson is not just a murderer or political extremist. He's a young man whose parents are probably asking themselves every day where they went wrong, whose future is now destroyed, who will have to live with this choice forever. Both deserve our compassion, not because of what they believed, but because they were human. Fourth, resist mass possession. Whether at political rallies, protests, or online comment sections, Jung would warn us, when you lose yourself in the group mind, archetypes take over. And when archetypes rule without consciousness, history turns bloody. Practice this. Before you share that outraged post, before you join that chant, before you dehumanize that enemy, ask yourself, am I thinking for myself right now? Or is something else thinking through me? The death of Charlie Kirk reveals something profound about our historical moment. We are living through what Jung would call a psychic epidemic. Ancient forces that once played out safely in myths and rituals are now erupting through politics, social media, and violence. The archetypal energies that built civilizations are now threatening to destroy them. The only defense is consciousness, seeing these forces clearly and refusing to be possessed by them. Jung left us with a haunting insight. We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. Charlie Kirk met his death at the hands of someone who couldn't recognize that his enemy was also his mirror, a reflection of his own capacity for absolutism and righteous rage. Tyler Robinson destroyed his life trying to kill something that was actually inside himself. Both men were destroyed by the same unconscious forces, just wearing different masks. The question for all of us is simple but urgent. Will we recognize ourselves in our enemies before the disguise becomes deadly? Will we choose consciousness over possession? Will we see humans instead of symbols? Will we have the courage to face our own darkness before we project it onto others? Jung's final warning echoes through our time like a prophecy. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The future, maybe even the survival of our civilization, depends on our answer. The choice is ours. The time is now. The consequences are forever. What will you choose?